Ready to order.
Yes. We're earning unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with a Capital One Saver card. So let's just get one of everything.
Everything?
Fire everything. The Capital One Saver card is at table 27 and they're earning unlimited 3% cash back.
Yes, Chef! This is so nice.
Had a feeling you'd want 3% cash back on dessert.
Ooh, tiramisu.
Earn unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with the Capital One Saver card. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Sonesta Travel Pass is the most rewarding way to travel. Sign up at Sonesta.com for instant savings, bonus points, and perks like early check-in and late checkout, room upgrades, and free stays. Choose from 1,100 hotels across 13 brands and unlock their best rates when you book with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. That's Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
It's Nikayla from Side Hustle Pro, and I want to tell you about something exciting. You're watching every dollar, and Walmart Business helps you stretch each one. From office supplies to snacks and cleaning gear, you'll get everyday low prices, plus easy bulk ordering and fast delivery. And with tools like spend tracking and multi-user accounts, staying organized is simple. Save time, money, and hassle at business.walmart.com. It's free to join.
Picture this. You're in the garage, hands covered in grease, just finished up tuning your engine with a part you found on eBay. And you realize, you know what? I could also use new brakes. So where do you go next? Back to eBay. And you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. You order a part, and if it doesn't fit, send it back. Simple as that. So when you dive into your next car project, start with eBay. All the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love.
This is the Daily Tech News for Friday, June 13th. Oh my gosh, Friday the 13th, 2025. We tell you what you need to know, follow up on context, and try to help each other understand.
Well, we're lucky because today Dr. Niki checks in on science funding in the U.S. and why are people sharing personal info and medical details on Meta's AI app?
Yes.
Why?
It's not as straightforward as you might think. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm into it now.
Let's start with what you need to know with that big story. So Meta's AI app has a share button. Maybe that surprises you. Maybe it doesn't. It's Meta, makers of Instagram and Facebook. They like sharing. So there's a button there. And if you want to share a summary of your query and its results with the public, you can do that. A share button is at the top of the screen next to the button for voice controls. It's important to note it is on the other end of the screen from the prompt button. The prompt button, where you type in all the queries and the follow-up queries, is down there at the bottom. Now, if you tap that share button, you are supposed to see a warning that says, prompts you post are public and visible to everyone. Avoid sharing personal or sensitive information. That happened for me the first time I shared a prompt. The second time I shared a prompt, that did not happen. It's like they warn you once, and then after that, they figure you got the message. I think that's going to play into this discussion as well. Business Insider's Katie Natopoulos reported that while most of the Discover feed is images people make, which kind of makes sense, you might want to share those publicly because you had a really clever prompt and it came up with something unexpected. There were several examples of queries that maybe weren't intended to be public or maybe shouldn't have been shared publicly, even if they were intended. Natopoulos shared some screenshots with the identifying information removed. But in one, a person included their phone number and email address when asking the bot to help draft a letter to a judge in a child custody case. Doesn't seem like something you'd want to share. Others were more on the line, like writing a poem for a spouse's birthday or asking medical questions. One was pretending to talk to a dead spouse. Seems like the kind of thing maybe you wouldn't want to share, but I don't know. Maybe they did. There were also some voice chats shared, which included the poster's voice, and two of the ones Natopoulos found really sounded to Natopoulos as if they weren't aware that the voice chat button had been pressed. There were like two people talking, and Meta's AI was talking to them, but they weren't responding to it. When I looked at my Discover tab in the Meta AI app this morning, I saw mostly images. I didn't see any audio, and the few text queries I saw were unremarkable. Now, Business Insider posted this story Wednesday morning. Friday, it got picked up by major pubs like BBC and TechCrunch. So it's possible that Meta has done something to moderate the feed, and that's why I'm not seeing these sorts of things. Or maybe it was just a weird quirk that caused them. Huyen, what do you think would cause this to happen?
So my immediate reaction is that a lot of times, and I kind of touched on this a little bit with Jason yesterday, I think, is that a lot of times in software development and product development, it's really product development, you have a great idea. Or you have an idea like, hey, like let's add the share button here because, we want to promote this new feature. And it's hard, to be fair, it's hard in isolation when you have this really great, slightly abstract, maybe never, it's a bit different than what you usually do idea. And then when real people use it, they do things that are quite outside, your often narrow perspective on how people use your tool. So it sounds like a great idea to share your images, but if people are actually using these for the more personal things, I think you'd be surprised how often we get surprised by things that we didn't think of when building a feature. So that is I think to be most like charitable explanation, and that maybe it could be a quirk, but I honestly feel like it feels like like they didn't expect some really personal stuff is coming out. People are asking medical questions. And but here's the thing though. I think especially with that disclaimer being shown once and not again, that's a little atypical. I wouldn't say it's like unheard of, but I think usually for purposes of legal, the folks that enforce the kind of copy that we put in are very, very conscientious about keeping legal disclaimers up, because once it goes down, that's when, the liability starts to creep in. So I'm actually kind of surprised at that. I think there's always an argument for people not wanting to see onerous messages. Yeah, I get it. That there's some sense of your user experience is bettered by not seeing such messages over and over again. But that I do find that a little bit interesting. So I'll throw that in the mix. I don't. Yeah. The fact that it seems like maybe they have understood this, and usually what happens in this case is that you address the most pertinent things, sometimes a little more ham-fisted, hard-coded than you'd like, and that you try to go back to the drawing board, be like, okay, let's rethink this thing and see what we can do to make it as full-featured but less troublesome or problematic than before. So that's my read on it. Maybe it's a little uncharitable, but that's kind of my read is that. Oh,
I don't think it's uncharitable at all. I think it's very, I think it's very equitable. Maybe not charitable, but I think it's pretty fair. I may have accidentally clicked a checkbox that says, don't show me this warning again. I'm not ruling that out. That's usually the way that kind of stuff is handled.
Yeah.
Like you make someone actively say, please don't show me this again. And that way the liability is on you. Like you said,
Absolutely.
Don't show me this anymore. If that's not the way it's working, which I don't think it is, I think it shows it to you once and then just tries to smooth things out, not show it to you and bug you again. I feel like butt dials are a pretty good excuse for this happening. That share button isn't small, and if it's capturing conversations that don't sound like people know they're being captured, I don't know how many times I have looked at my phone and realized, how did I make that happen? I was just holding it and suddenly the cover screen has been edited or I'm about to dial 911 accidentally or whatever. I could see that happening. And with the million plus users of Meta AI right now, which is apparently what you got, a small percentage of those happening would be enough for Business Insider to notice.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. This is kind of yesterday there was a Google Meet outage, so we had to use Slack huddles at work. And it's funny. This was a group of 12 very tech savvy people, including myself, who did not realize the mute button was actually not on. And I actually started laughing out loud because people were just struggling with a new technology and doing all kinds of funny things. So I again, as people who are tech savvy, that's a thing that'll happen. And I think that's another thing too, is that a lot of times you kind of turn a hose on and you forget everything that goes into the hose, audio. And I mean, it's a little disturbing just because we are in a place where a new strain of, for example, identity theft or social engineering attacks is using some AI to replicate someone's voice. So it is a little bit scary sometimes to think, well, I mean, podcasters, we're screwed. But average people having their voices out there, it's maybe again someone's like, oh shoot, we got to turn the tap off and maybe rethink this a little bit. So
it's not impossible that some people think they need to hit the share button to share with the bot. Right? Yes. I mean, I don't know what you do about that, but that could happen too. And then there's also just, I think of as the Venmo effect. People share things on Venmo and that you're like, why are they sharing that? But they're like, no, I love sharing the fact that I paid people for cat sitting or whatever. And so maybe there's that too, where people are like, no, I have nothing to hide. I want to share it. Oh, gosh. Anything is possible.
I do have one more story. Apparently at some point, Slack had enabled HDR emojis, and I'm in a Slack with a lot of Android people, and someone put up some of those HDR emojis, and I was on a Mac, and something about color profiles, but it was like they burned holes into my screen. Like I was getting a migraine because they were so bright. And by contrast, everything else that wasn't HDR, which was pretty much everything else on my screen. So it's so interesting because again, and someone who knows a lot more about me than about like color profiles and stuff, that said there's a very valid reason for them to do this. But yes, in this case, we're giving everybody migraines. So sometimes you really just don't understand the ripple effects of what you do. So, and again, being charitable, maybe they just didn't realize. So
I doubt that Meta is actively being malicious in this particular case.
No, I think it's just like
negligent,
a rush.
maybe, but
negligent. Yeah. And I think that's like a theme with generative, like this generation of AI. Everyone's in a rush. And I've been in at times where I actually worked at a place where, we talk about test-driven development in engineering, but there was a team on one of my old jobs where it was very specifically coverage, meme-driven development, or viral-driven development. They wanted to create features that would make us go viral and get coverage, like on the news.
Sure.
And yes, that's a good idea, sort of in theory, but you can kind of see where that made a big headache for the rest of us who had to do like the regular grown-up work of making sure that things were stable and made. So yeah. Yes, this is how stuff happens. You just have a great idea, you get someone on board, stuff goes out, and then it's like, oh shoot, I guess we went viral for the wrong way, so we're going to backtrack on this.
Some product manager is like, great, we went viral. I don't care if it was for the wrong reason. I get that does happen, but this one doesn't feel like design, and it feels like everyone's treating it as if Meta intentionally was making people do this, and I think probably the Meta developers who worked on this are as surprised as anyone.
What's that phrase? Don't attribute to malice what could be more easily attributed to stupidity. Something like that. Yeah.
There are so many variations of the phrasing, but that's it. That's the sense of it.
We're human. It happens. I've done some stupid stuff. So anyway, well, DTNS is made possible by you, the listener. Thank you to Paul Boyer, D. Lacer, Brad, and welcome a slew of new patrons.
Whoa.
Scott, Signs, Gene, Philip, and Jason coming straight in with the annual pledge.
Whoa, Jason.
Amazing.
Not Jason Hell either. Totally different Jason. That's amazing. Thank you, new patrons.
Picture this. You're in the garage, hands covered in grease, just finished up tuning your engine with a part you found on eBay, and you realize, you know what? I could also use new brakes. So where do you go next? Back to eBay. You can find anything there. It's unreal. Wipers, headlights, even cold air intakes. It's all there. And you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. You order a part, and if it doesn't fit, send it back. Simple as that. Look, DIY fixes can be major. Doesn't matter if it's just maintenance or a major mod. You got it, especially when things are guaranteed to fit. So when you dive into your next car project, start with eBay. All the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. Banking with Capital One helps you keep more money in your wallet with no fees or minimums on checking accounts and no overdraft fees. Just ask the Capital One bank guy. It's pretty much all he talks about, in a good way. He'd also tell you that this podcast is his favorite podcast, too. Ah, really? Thanks, Capital One bank guy. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
Hi friends, Nikayla from Side Hustle Pro here. Whether you're running a nonprofit, a school, or a small business, Walmart Business is here to support your mission. They make it easy to order what you need, from tech and cleaning supplies to everyday essentials, all at low prices and with helpful tools like spend tracking and tax-exempt purchasing for eligible organizations. Because when your operations are smooth, your impact can be bigger. Visit business.walmart.com to get started.
Hey, this is Farnoosh Torabi from the So Money podcast. Running a business means wearing a lot of hats, but ordering supplies shouldn't be one of the ones you don't like. Walmart Business helps organizations like yours save time, money, and the headache of managing purchases. From office essentials to bulk break room snacks, it's all in one place, online, in-store, or right in their app. Sign up for free at business.walmart.com and get back to what really matters, running your business.
I want my dog to live a long, happy life, maybe even hit 19. So I feed them Ollie. Ollie's fresh and nutritious human-grade meals are made to support their health and happiness with protein-packed recipes dogs go crazy for, like beef with sweet potatoes, turkey with blueberries, or lamb with cranberries. Honestly, you might start thinking, dang, my dog eats better than I do. And that's probably true when it comes to Ollie. Head to ollie.com/healthypup and use code HEALTHYPUP to get 60% off your first box of meals. Plus, they offer a clean bowl guarantee on the first box. So if you're not completely satisfied, you'll get your money back. That's OLLIE.com/healthypup and enter code HEALTHYPUP to get 60% off your first box. Feed your forever friend with Ollie.
There's more we need to talk about today. Let's get to the briefs.
All right. Well, developer Leon Omalan noticed in the latest Canary build of Android Studio that Google included a notice that read, "Instant app support will be removed by Google Play in December 2025. What is that, you ask? Well, the fact that you had to ask is part of the reason they're shutting it down. The idea was to let developers give you a way to try an app without having to download it. And Google says developers didn't implement it. Confirm as an Android developer. Android authorities, Michelle Ramon, hey, we know that guy, noted that it was because it was pretty difficult to implement. For one, you had to cut your app down to 15 megabytes in order to offer an instant app version. Yes, I mean, it's not surprising.
I have used Apple Clips.
Yeah.
Twice.
Yes.
I don't think I ever used an Android instant app.
Yeah, and it's a great idea. I mean, it was almost like not instantaneous, but it almost was like loading a web page kind of style. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that a lot of us ran into is like there's not a lot of good use cases. So, for example, I worked on Trello for a long time, and it was a really great idea because we had a lot of ideas for like we could really like get people like going onto our Kanban board and stuff. But the problem is that a lot of apps write a lot of their features for one, assuming that someone is logged in, and so a lot of features tend to need a logged in account, either because like your settings or just your personal or just like the nature of things. Like I work at Netflix now. It'd be really hard to do this, I think, to like allow someone to kind of instantly watch something without an account. Yeah. And so it became just like, it's even if you take out the part of like having to slim down your app, which is kind of a thing with Android apps anyway, there were so many things that kept us from doing this, especially because of the ideas like, well, you have to create features that don't require apps. And for a large class of like domains, that don't require login. For a large class of domains, that's just not a thing. Just not
15
a thing.
megabytes is nothing. Like that does not give you.
I mean, they're usually stripped down versions. Like I think the one I saw was like, it was okay, but yeah, 15 megabytes is nothing. So these days.
Anker has filed a recall for its PowerCore 10,000 power bank. Specifically, look for model number A1263. Apparently, there's a risk of overheating, which could lead to burns or fires. And this isn't a theoretical risk. The U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission received 19 reports of fires and explosions, 2 reports of minor burns, and 11 property damage claims related to this power bank malfunctioning. Now, Anker sold 1,158,000 units between June 2016 and December 2022. So most of them did not catch fire, but better safe than sorry. This is a true recall. There's no fix. If you have one of these, you need to dispose of it at a municipal household hazardous waste collection center. And Anker has a recall page where you can request either a $30 gift card or a replacement 10,000 milliamp hour power bank. You have to prove you have one of these models, and there's a few things you have to jump through, a few hoops, but mostly if you have one, you'll be able to get that.
Well, Valve announced that its Steam Game Store and client is available as a native app for Apple Silicon in beta. Apple is phasing out Intel Mac support after this next version of Mac OS and will start winding down its app translation layer, Rosetta 2, starting with Mac OS 28.
It's funny. I saw people saying like just under the wire. I'm like, well, actually Mac OS 28 would have been just under the wire. This is 2 versions ahead of time. So I don't feel like Steam's doing too badly there. But
no.
This version apparently works really fast and really efficiently. Razer announced new versions of its Kishi, Kishi, mobile gaming controllers meant for use with phones and tablets. The Kishi V3 Pro XL can accommodate a tablet with a 13-inch screen. Take that switch too. The Kishi V3 Pro works with devices up to 8 inches. The controllers use USB-C with charging pass-through, have anti-drift TMR thumbsticks with swappable caps, dual mouse click-back buttons, and claw grip bumpers. On Android devices, you can get Razer's Sensa HD haptics in the controller as well. There's also a model meant only for phones called the Kishi V3. That one has the anti-drift control sticks, but not the swappable caps. And that base model costs $100. The V3 Pro, that's the 8-inch one, is $150, and that huge V3 Pro XL is $200.
I kind of want to get it now and somehow find a 13-inch tablet that I can.
I have a 13-inch iPad Pro that
please try it. And if you get one, Keith, let me know because that's just amazing. Well, Garmin announced its latest Venu X1 fitness watch with a 2-inch square AMOLED screen. It has a shorter battery life than other Garmin's at 2 days with the screen always active or 8 days with it off. It also does not have ECG support or multi-band GPS. It does have a flashlight, full color mapping, a scratch-resistant sapphire lens, and a titanium caseback. The Venu X1 launches June 18th for $700.
Yeah, this line usually doesn't have, this is kind of halfway between. A lot of times it's Phoenix line has some of this stuff like the full color mapping, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's definitely an Apple Watch competitor because most of the other, I have a Venu 3, I think, and yeah, this is definitely a different form factor. It is pretty sexy though and slim. It's slim. Which is kind of my thing with some of the Garmin watches. They're just big, chunky things. But
Garmin doesn't get enough respect for its watches.
Dude, it's crazy because if you love Garmin, you love Garmin, and they do a really good job. I just like the one thing I could say is that their software isn't quite as slick as the Apple Watch Wear OS software, but dang, do they do a good job. They really deserve some love. So
yeah, take that, Garmin. I mean, the love.
Yeah.
A few bits of Apple news for those who celebrate. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman says Apple has an internal spring 2026 date for launching the revamped Siri based on Apple Intelligence. It would come as part of iOS 26.4, so you wouldn't have to wait all the way to the next WWDC if Mr. Gurman is right, which he often is. Counterpoint Research says Apple iPhone sales grew 15% globally in May, boosted by a big boom in sales in China, where Apple took over the top spot for smartphone sales. iPhone sales in China have not been doing well, bounced back really big by offering steep discounts. That was a big part of it. And Counterpoint suspects some tariff dodgers were going to China and buying them in order to get around tariffs. Finally, Reuters reports that Foxconn shipped $3.2 billion worth of iPhones from India between March and May, and 97% of those iPhones that Foxconn made for Apple were headed for the United States. Apple has announced that it's got plans to ship U.S.-bound iPhone production from China to India by the end of next year.
And a few bits of fallout from Meta's huge investment in Scale AI. Co-founder and CEO Alexander Wang is leaving to join Meta, and Scale's chief strategy officer Jason Droge will take over as CEO. And OpenAI's CFO Sarah Fryer told a tech conference in Paris on Friday that the company will continue to do business with Scale despite Meta's large investment.
If you're worried about the effect U.S. export restrictions will have on NVIDIA's business in China, good news. NVIDIA is going to stop telling you what effect it's having. It will not be including any potential revenue from China in its future earnings forecasts. So I guess it's not stopping telling you. It's going to make its predictions not include China. That way, if they do well in China, it's a bonus. CNN asked NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang if he thought the U.S. would ease the restrictions, and Huang said, "I'm not counting on it, but if it happens, then it'll be a great bonus."
Well, Taiwan's TSMC, them as the company that's making everybody's chips, has established its first research center outside of Taiwan with the University of Tokyo in Japan. The lab will be located on the university's Honggo campus near Ueno, and the lab will research materials, devices, processes, metrology. Is that how you pronounce that? Metrology, packaging, and circuit design.
Yeah, and it'll be near the pandas in the Ueno Zoo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so,
So it's a little bonus
pandas
for you.
and semiconductors. There you go.
What's not to love?
Perfect.
Those are the essentials for today. Let's dive a little deeper.
All right, it's time to check in with Dr. Niki on what's been happening with science funding over the past month.
Dr. Niki, I must thank you for continuing to keep us updated on this.
Someone's got to do it.
A good time necessarily, but yeah, appreciate it. So when last we checked in, it was May 14th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have a story from the end of May. I think this one's like neutral news at least, but weather researchers performed a 100-hour YouTube live stream starting May 28th going up to June 1st, which is the beginning of hurricane season. The really impressive part that I thought they filled it with talks, like scientific talks that were all 30 minutes long. And then in between they had like messages about raising awareness for the funding cuts to weather science. And they talked about things how the budget cuts are impacting your weather forecasts, how weather data centers have been shut down. And really, they're just trying to show the values of climate science. And in their first 30 hours, they got 77,000 views. I think I checked in around hour like 58, and they were going strong. You know, there's one thing about scientists: you give them a slot for a talk, they're gonna give that talk, even if it's 2 a.m. So
yeah, if they're asked to talk about their thing. I've had that. I know what you mean. And this is still available if you wanted to go back and view it, right? Like
I think they cut it up into a bunch of segments, but it is on YouTube. Just look for weather researchers 100-hour YouTube live stream. And
That'll
you'll find
get you
it
there. Yeah. All right. Into the budget cuts.
Oh, yes. We're still talking budget cuts. So just to remind everyone, we've been talking about this for months now, but grants for scientists like me usually come from federal foundations like NSF, National Science Foundation, and NIH, the National Institutes of Health, and some other ones. And then they decide how many grants they award based on their budget, which is mandated by Congress, and Congress has to get a proposal for that, which they vote on and say yes or no or change it. And that's where we're at right now, or at least a few days ago at the end of May. So you may have heard the current administration made a proposal to Congress. And it's one of the skinniest proposals in terms of science funding that we've seen in quite a few decades. So I think every single scientist is upset about the cuts to their specific organization. Have you heard of any, just in passing?
The NASA one, I definitely heard about.
Yeah, so if you have an interest in like astronomy and anything like that, basically this proposed cut would slash NASA by 50%. It would cut about 40 quote unquote less important missions. This includes things like the Mars sample return or the Juno mission, which is orbiting Jupiter. That's only 2 out of the 40 that would have to get cut from this proposal. Just to name a few other ones, NIH has an overall 40% cut, which includes cuts to things like cancer research and Alzheimer's research. We already kind of talked about this. We suspected that these cuts were going to get proposed, and now they're getting proposed. For me personally, NSF biology specifically is proposed to get a 70% cut, which is so much.
That's steep.
I don't even want to think about it. I also looked at social sciences. I thought they might get also hit, and they're also at a 70% cut at NSF. The CDC is getting a 53% cut, mainly targeting things like vaccines. You've probably heard talk about that in the last few days. AIDS relief, to just pull out another random one, is getting a 30% cut. So that's not all of it. That's just some numbers that I pull out. But yeah, again, this is the proposed congressional budget. Usually these get discussed and voted on and they change. In the past, these kinds of harsh cuts have been proposed and then actually the budget got increased. I don't know if that's what's going to happen this time. I hope so. We'll probably talk about it on DTNS and we'll see.
Check in for our July update to find how that went. This is the big, beautiful bill, right? That's the budget reconciliation bill. And while there are a lot of negotiations going on around it, so yeah, things could change. the things that are most likely to change are things that don't have to do with finances. Those will get kicked out. And I'm not sure what else is going to get negotiated here. It's in the Senate right now.
Yeah.
So there's lots that can change before it gets sent back to the House.
And there's things like, we talked about merging the different institutes at NIH and NSF. That's been rejected, but it might also get sent back. I don't know the political terms for it, but like it might come back again. So
yeah.
It's
because the way it works is the House passed a version of this and sent it to the Senate. The Senate then looks at it and passes their own version, sends it back to the House for what's called reconciliation, where they, try to make the two versions jive. Then the parliamentarian gets to weigh in and say, well, that doesn't belong in a budget reconciliation bill. That would go in another bill and kicks stuff out. So there's a lot of stops before it actually gets sent to the president's desk to become law.
Yeah, hopefully those work in science's favor.
They may or may not.
I'm
not
still putting in grants, so we'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Related to this current ongoing funding slashes is something that may have flown under the radar. I gotta make jokes because, this was early June. The funding for Flybase got slashed. You may have never heard about Flybase unless you're a fly
is this actual,
researcher.
because of your flying under the radar, this is flies?
Actual flies, yes.
Okay.
Buzz. Fruit flies, to be precise. Drosophila melanogaster.
Okay, yeah. Okay, makes sense.
Okay, so you may not have never heard about Flybase, but it may have helped you in innumerable ways. So this is the main central database that contains every single thing that we know about fruit flies, all of their genetic information, every single gene, the annotations, the phenotypes, the papers that are related to those phenotypes, they're all in this database. And that's, I don't know if you guys know how important fruit flies are, but like so much of the genetic work and like understanding and knowledge that we do is done in fruit flies because they have a small genome. They're really easy to raise in the lab. You can make 1 million of them, every other month. So a ton of research is being done on them, and it's all stored in this database. And this database is generally funded, like 90% funded by this $2 million grant from the NIH to Harvard. And as you know, if you listen to last month's update, Harvard's budget or Harvard's grants got paused. And so NIH just kind of stopped paying the bills for Flybase and panic ensued. So a few of my colleagues are fly researchers and just texted me like, we're done. But the team is collecting donations to just at least stay open for now. They're thinking about archiving their site, at least to keep what they have somewhere. They're looking to move their database maybe elsewhere. They're considering collaborating with the Human Genome Project, which is also NIH funded, but isn't related to Harvard. So, but
This is caught up in the fight between the White House and Harvard.
Which many other things are. I just thought this was a relevant example of something you may not have thought about. Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. And then we got one last one.
And as you talked about, the Senate is currently talking about the budget. And on June 9th, NIH employees published the Bethesda Declaration. Did you get wind of this? Because my feed was full of this. And I didn't know if it was one of those things where like only scientists heard about it.
Yeah,
but,
I think so.
So I'll share it with you. Over 300 NIH employees signed the letter in dissent to the administration's cuts to federal funding, noting the over 2,000 NIH grants worth $9.5 billion that have been terminated since January, and almost no new grants have been issued also since then, and also in response to the proposed budget cuts. So they did this specifically a day before the new NIH director, Jay Bhattacharya, is going to testify in a key Senate spending committee. So that was on June 10th. So they issued this letter to show that they're not quite happy with what this new director is doing, and for the Senate to maybe look into the, let's say, logic behind how he's managing the NIH.
Gotcha. All right. I hesitate to say there's been more in the past, but I'm wondering once we get past the budget reconciliation bill, if what we continue to see after that, put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I'm at the point where I'm like, where do I send my grants? Because if they cut the funding by 70%, like the success rate is already 7% for a good grant in my field. So if they cut that by 70%, like, I'm going to have to start looking for rich friends who like birds.
Any rich bird friends? Let us know.
Let me know.
Well, Dr. Niki, thank you so much for keeping on top of this. I know it may not always be the easiest thing to do, but very much appreciated.
I enjoy being able to keep people informed if they may not have heard about these things. So I help in that way. That's the way that I can.
If people want to reach out and find you, where should they go?
Absolutely. I've been posting this, like the text version of these on my website at NicoleAckermans.com. And now I'm tech savvy. So I've linked my website to my Bluetooth. Oh my gosh. I'm tired, Tom. To my Blue Sky. You can find me on Blue Sky. Also, NicoleAckermans.com because I'm verified now. See you next month.
Thanks, Dr. Niki. Also, Niki wanted us to mention that since we recorded that, the Bethesda Declaration is now up to more than 18,000 signatures. If you want to join in the conversation in our Discord, do it by linking your Patreon account. Just become a patron at patreon.com/DTNS.
Picture this. You're in the garage, hands covered in grease, just finished up tuning your engine with a part you found on eBay, and you realize, you know what? I could also use new brakes. So where do you go next? Back to eBay. You can find anything there. It's unreal. Wipers, headlights, even cold air intakes. It's all there. And you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. You order a part, and if it doesn't fit, send it back. Simple as that. Look, DIY fixes can be major. Doesn't matter if it's just maintenance or a major mod. You got it, especially when things are guaranteed to fit. So when you dive into your next car project, start with eBay. All the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. Banking with Capital One helps you keep more money in your wallet with no fees or minimums on checking accounts and no overdraft fees. Just ask the Capital One bank guy. It's pretty much all he talks about, in a good way. He'd also tell you that this podcast is his favorite podcast too. Ah, really? Thanks, Capital One bank guy. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
We end every episode of DTNS with some shared wisdom. Today, Jason has some help for Jason.
Yeah. Jason, Hal, the host, not me, the emailer, he writes, mentioned that he had issues with parental controls not propagating from his device to his daughter's phone. Well, it's been a few years since I had to change settings. I think it was iOS 19 to 21. Oops, make that 12 to 14. But our versions had to match exactly. Make a change on my 12.2.3 iPhone, would not show up on a 12.2.2 iPod Touch. Update the Touch, work just fine. If everything in your home isn't on the latest and greatest, try updating everything and then changing the settings again. And I did forward that to Jason Howell. Jason. So the Jasons are now in sync as well.
The settings are in sync and the Jasons, or the versions are in sync and the Jasons. Perfect.
And thanks for that. That's a great tip.
Wonderful.
Appreciate people, sharing positive things like that. It's really good.
Well, if you have any other tips to share or just want to tell us what you're thinking about, have some insight into a story, share it with us. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com.
Big thanks to Jason and Dr. Niki for contributing to today's show. Thank you for being along for Daily Tech News Show. Good news, too. If you keep up on music news, Daily Music Headlines now available as an Amazon Flash briefing. Add it to your Echo now. This week's episodes of Daily Tech News Show Briefing were created by the following people: host, producer, and writer Tom Merritt, host and writer Jason Howell, co-host Jen Cutter, co-host Wentway Dow, co-host Sarah Lane, producer Anthony Lemos, producer Roger Chang, editor Hammond Chamberlain, editor Victor Bognot, science correspondent Dr. Niki Ackermans, social media producer and moderator Zoe Detterding, our mods Beatmaster W. Scottus 1, BioCow, Captain Kipper, Steve Guadarrama, Paul Reese, Matthew J. Stevens, aka Gadget Virtuoso, and JD Galloway. Mod and video hosting by Dan Christensen. Music provided by Martin Bell and Dan Luters. Art by Len Peralta. Acast ad support from Tatiana Matias. Patreon support from Tom McNeil. And our guest this week was Andy Beach and Jen Briney. And thanks to all the patrons who make the show possible.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
I couldn't hear anything.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With the Capital One Venture X card, you earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy. Plus, you get premium benefits at a collection of luxury hotels when you book on Capital One Travel. And with Venture X, you get access to over 1,000 airport lounges worldwide. Open up a world of travel possibilities with the Capital One Venture X card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Hi, friends. It's Farnoosh Torabi from the So Money podcast here. Whether you're running a nonprofit, a school, or a small business, Walmart Business is here to support your mission. They make it easy to order what you need, from tech and cleaning supplies to everyday essentials, all at low prices and with helpful tools like spend tracking and tax-exempt purchasing for eligible organizations. Because when your operations are smooth, your impact can be bigger. Visit business.walmart.com to get started.